Today's episode is brought to you by HID Mobile Access, the most secure and convenient way to open doors with the device you already use every day. With HID, organizations get flexible, future-ready solutions that easily integrate into workplace and tenant experience apps, creating a seamless journey from street to suite. If you're ready to modernize your access control experience, try it for yourself. Sign up for a free trial at hidglobal.com/solutions and click on mobile access.
Today on Founders, we sit down with Thru Shivakumar, CEO of Cohesion, a Chicago-based prop tech innovator bringing AI, analytics, and human-centric design into the built environment. We dig into what it takes to unify systems, people, and spaces, and how data is driving the next wave of building intelligence and physical security. This is the future of connected buildings, told by one of the people that's making it happen. So as promised, I am here with Thru Shivakumar, not Shivakumar, Shivakumar from Cohesion, and joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Troy Johnston from HID. Thru, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I do a bunch of research for these types of things, and I've distilled what I would say the internet believes Cohesion is. So I want to read you this statement and you tell me what I missed. Okay? So it says, Cohesion is a Chicago-based smart building and workplace experience company that offers a unified platform for building operations, access control integration, tenant engagement, and advanced analytics. Its solutions bring together physical systems like access control, HVAC, elevators, and sensors with AI-driven data insights to create responsive, efficient, and human-centered buildings. What the hell does that mean?
That was great. Wow, I have trained AI so well. Yeah, no, it's actually a really good description. So I can.
Did it miss anything?
No, it actually didn't. Wow. The systems can be broader, but you listed the big ones out.
What other systems would you
more like enterprise, like maintenance software, so more of the software side of things from a user operational flow.
Sure.
But from a building system, you've covered the big ones.
Fantastic.
But as you know, access control has many systems within it.
Systems within systems. It's like Alice's hole, right?
Yeah.
You get
rabbit hole.
You just go deep as far as you want to go. So We're talking about buildings, we're talking about smart systems, we're talking about access control, but before we can even get there, what's your origin story? How do you come into the physical security industry? And was that even the purpose at the outset?
It was not, actually. The whole journey, my journey was serendipitous. And I will say that I've had a very interesting career, very non-linear. So it's like this and windy and turny and everything that I thought I was going to be. I'm glad I got here, but it was not what I planned in general. So,
what did you plan for?
I planned that there's a lot of things I plan for, but we'll keep it non-personal first.
Sure.
How about that?
Sure.
So my journey, I started in corporate finance. I graduated from University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana with a finance degree. I did real estate classes, always had this passion for real estate, building architecture, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. So I joined Baxter Healthcare, which was a healthcare pharmaceutical biotech company based out of Chicago, and I lasted about a year there. It was in a financial development program, and I had internships all throughout my career or all throughout my college journey. And so I didn't, the development program wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. Fast forward, my second job was at Hyatt Hotels. So I was with Hyatt, and it was a new brand an old brand that we had bought called Select Hotels Group. And I was part of the founding team of Hyatt Place. So I was on the ground of that journey of Hyatt Place and Hyatt House. And we took what was, if you remember, Summerfield Suites and Amera Suites.
Sure.
That brand we converted, repositioned, recapitalized, and renovated all of those hotels and started that brand. And what was really cool about that journey was that I got to see an entrepreneurial role, but we were not part of Global Hyatt yet. They hadn't merged us in until we proved that brand was something. And so I got pulled into conversations of, what carpet do you like? We were in the branding conversation of those 9 dots. Those 9 dots represented part of the brand and founding story of the brand itself. I can't tell you what they all mean right now, but it was really cool to be part of that journey. And while I was still in finance, I got to be part of this small, team that was charging forward.
So I would imagine at some point in this whole process, the nugget of the idea of how do we take this from the hotel and hospitality space into the built environment? Like, at what point did the light bulb go off in your head?
It goes off at the next job, which was
Okay.
in parking real estate. So GE at the time had parking and a big equity portfolio. GE Capital was very big back then and had a big real estate footprint. And so I went to parking after Hyatt, and in parking we had, lots of parking lots, parking garages. And what was similar about both of those two was that they were very data-driven operations, because there was a lot of turnover. It wasn't like an office building where you have a lease, you sign the lease, and it stays in place for 10, 15 years at the time back in the day when it did. These things were daily, hourly operations, right? And so a lot of turnover, a lot around experience, a lot around, understanding the demographics around that kind of microcosm, that little microenvironment. It was really fascinating to me. And so when I was in parking, it was really interesting because at the time, this is like early 2000s, right? I went up to my CEO and I said, hey, we should really think about dynamic pricing, like dynamic pricing based on demand, like how full the parking garages were and things like that. And he kind of brushed me off and said, you don't know how prices come about inside a parking garage. The guy down the street sets the price there. We either follow or we look. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't seem all that,
It's not
smart.
that complicated either.
No, it's not that complicated, but it can be demand driven, right? So like when the garage is less full, you bring down prices. It doesn't seem that tough, but it was not, we were not in the digital age at that point in time, right? And so what started to happen as we got into the Great Recession was that everything started to change. Like in the parking garages, we put in equipment, like we put in pay equipment that was automated exits, like we put in access control in those, like not just gate arm and down, but it was gate payment arm and down. And so you had all these flows, and I was part of, even though I was in finance, I was still supporting all of the operational side of this. And as we went through the recession, parking became one of those assets that lasted through, it was pretty recession proof because people still drove. And hospitality obviously took a hit, but both of those things understood the user experience. So that's where I started to look at, we had a lot of data around the operations of these two asset types, and it just stuck with me. I didn't think I'd get into office at this point in time, but one thing led to another. I was with the parking company for about 5 years, and then I went into the private equity side and did acquisitions, business development. So I was buying and selling assets, real estate, going around the country. I'd always go into a new city. I'd drive around. So I'd spend a day driving around, understanding the streets, doing walking tours of like how people understood how people were moving and what was driving demand in those spaces. So it was always, for me, a very data-driven exercise, and I'm a data junkie, so I kind of love all of that. And as I got into the retail side, so I then got my MBA, did all of that, and then I went into the City of Chicago's Economic Development Council. I took a step into the nonprofit world because they had an infrastructure and real estate strategist role open. In 2014, Mayor Rahm Emanuel was the mayor of Chicago, and he wanted to do a lot of economic development that related to more than just attracting companies to Chicago. It was, how can we put Chicago really on the map more holistically and more strategically? And so that's that. I worked on really big real estate assets at this point, like the Chicago Riverwalk, and how do we activate that? And again, really driving towards user experience on how people come about assets. So I think of real estate as massive. They're the backbone of community, right? And so real estate is not just structure. To me, it's this stunning architecture, but it lives and breathes, and that living and breathing is the people, the systems, the infrastructure that all sits within it. And so as I made my way through my career, I'm like, wait, none of this really makes sense. Like none of this works together. We don't plan it together. The technology is what's going to drive the change, and nobody really, it's disjointed. And so when I got pulled over to be chief of staff to the the business leader who was leading the Economic Development Council. The mayor was the chairman, the vice chairman was the business leader, and there was 80 CEOs from, all around Chicagoland on the board. And so we were a very active economic development agency. Loved the role, never thought I was going to be on it. So Journey never really said, you're going to go step into a nonprofit role and make, 1/3 your salary that you were making in private equity. That was not part of the plan. But it actually gave me it started, as I look back, it was the journey of, I took that first entrepreneurial role. We went through a recession. Real estate was obviously a big part of that recession. So there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of chaos all throughout my career. And there's a lot of change too. Like we did LED retrofits on lighting in garages. We did, parking equipment change outs. We did software modernization on financial systems. So as part of the change at all of my points in my career. And as I said I would do the chief of staff role for 2 to 3 years. But, as I entered into my late 30s and 40s, I really wanted to start building something. Like I had this itch to build something. And I ran into a gentleman on the nonprofit side that was the chairman of a mechanical engineering company based out of Chicago. ESD Global. And ESD at the time had the contract for a new construction building in Chicago that was 1 million square feet that wanted to be the most intelligent building there was in the entire world. And what that meant was that they wanted to have all of the systems connected because none of the systems talked. So we're talking access control, so card readers, physical access control systems, elevators. They wanted to bring in mobile key cards at the time into that experience. So we integrated with HID back, 8 years ago. So we were one of the original partners on Bluetooth, bringing that into an app experience. But it was ordering a coffee, it was, booking parking, it was everything that somebody did, the user's journey inside of an office building, they wanted connected. That was a user journey. The piece that really excited me was the data side of it, right? Not only are we connecting everything, it was really that we connected everything and then we tied out and brought the data out so that we could understand why are people doing what they're doing? How can we truly affect the operation and make it more efficient, both from a resource standpoint as well as a utility standpoint and a labor standpoint? Like how can we make everything work together better?
So I have a question there actually. So this building owner comes to you and says, hey, I really want to do this connected building, right? This smart building, which is probably revolutionary at the time. What year was that?
2018.
2018. Okay, so it's not all that long ago, but in technology terms, it's ancient history. What was the reason? Like, what was their thought process to say we want to do a smart building?
Well, at the time, in 2018, right, we had smartphones. So we're well into the journey of smartphones and people are using apps. I think super apps are just kind of starting, right? Uber is already out there. Uber was starting to do more than just shared rides. They were just introducing, I think at the time, food, but this concept of super app. And so they wanted, as margins were being squeezed in real estate, it was how can we be more user-centric and how can we give people more, right, from a hospitality perspective in office buildings via a digital means, right? So that's what they wanted. But it was also at the back end of it was how do we get data out of these, the people, the systems, and how can we then make the building react, right? How can the systems react? So how can you close that loop of reaction?
Right. And was that their desire at the outset, or was data like a byproduct of connecting all these systems together?
It was actually the outset. They wanted it to be the idea of autonomous self-healing was the idea that they wanted. Now, those are scary words, and they wanted the digital twin to connect all of that. I don't use any of those words anymore because smart is as smart as people can conceptually understand today. Yep. So I dumbed it down. We started cohesionib.com as our web address, right? IB stands for intelligent building. We had started as an intelligent building company, but we dumbed it down to smart because people didn't understand what intelligent meant, right? And for me, the difference was smart means that you're connected. Intelligent means that it's working together in an ecosystem. And so we still, people will ask me from time to time, like, do you have the digital twin technology? I go, we do. It's behind. It's behind everything. It's not like a robotic digital twin. It's a data digital twin. Right?
What does that even mean?
It just means that we're replicating how data flows inside of a software platform, right? So we can understand what's affecting one another inside of a software platform. So digital twin is just a virtual replica of what's happening, right? In the real world. That's what that means, in my opinion.
I want to go back to the data point, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone talks about data. It's everywhere. It's accessible, right? But it's the rubbish in, rubbish out sort of theory, right? So how do you get this data? How do you make sense of it? And what are people asking for in the real estate market?
Yeah, So I'll answer that in data is not, there is no like common nomenclature in buildings and building systems, right? So data is tough. And to be able to make sense of it, it doesn't make sense. You would think that what's been hard about data in general from building systems is that they don't actually, like one system, you can't say, I want to understand occupancy, like how much energy per person am I using? Like that's actually in the building. Yep. You can't marry those sources of data together because there was no kind of common, there's no common denominator. Right. Let's just put it that way, right? And so if we think about that, that data has to be cleansed and structured and normalized. And that just didn't exist because people didn't know how to actually clean it. And so the data that came in real estate was all financial because real estate has been a financial asset for, the entirety of what we remember. And so the data that needed to come out from an operational perspective, and I did a lot of this work back in my parking and hotel days, like in the hospitality side back in the day, we looked at revenue per average room, right, and compared it, and they had this whole reporting system that was around that. So we had a lot of data to look at operations, and we looked at, how many people, like per occupancy, how many people we staffed in the hotel. If you looked at an office building, there's no staffing ratios, right? There's nothing. It's just based on how the property manager wants to staff it and what they can pass through. Because most property management companies will do a pass-through plus cost or some sort of markup. And so there's nothing to say, hey, we can make this more efficient. And so what really intrigued me was that office buildings in general were not run from a data perspective. It was a feeling, right? Of that individual asset. That all changed. We had a big thing called the global pandemic that stopped people from coming into buildings. Yep. So I was looking at occupancy reporting based on badge swipes pre-pandemic. And people were like, why do we care?
Yeah, right.
Why do we care in office buildings? Well, you really cared during the pandemic, right? Because nobody came in. But we weren't seeing people change how they were heating and cooling buildings or using the resources based on how many people were in the buildings. So all of a sudden you start to see the connections. When you have a big crisis like that, you start to see that we actually have to care about how all these things are connected, and we have to be reactionary to that. You could be proactive, and we're getting to that state of proactiveness today, but we're still not there.
Is that the end goal for these buildings, is to have it be fully automated?
It is the end goal because there's a lot of things that change. One of the biggest things that affect technology change, right, is labor. Do we have enough people to do the jobs? The building engineers, a lot of labor unions are on the building trades, and that is a shrinking audience. Like we are trying. I know BOMA is a big organization, like Building Owners and Managers trade organization, that's spending a lot of time on workforce development because there's not enough people to serve the building. And so a lot of building engineers that's a shrinking workforce. And so the way to now you'll start to see digital transformation because when a labor market gets hit or there's any sort of workforce issues, you'll start to see people adopt.
That's really interesting. It's something that I hadn't considered because for a long time you would think that maybe the labor unions would be at odds with the building owners, right, with cost perspective and rules and contracts and all that. But in the modern era, when you have this shrinking labor force, they need to do more to get people in so that way there are jobs, right? Yep. AI and automation is not all about replacing people. No. It's about making people more efficient with the data. But you can only do that if you have the people in the chairs.
Correct. Yeah. So it's really about, from our standpoint, it's not, since the workforce is shrinking, we need to equip the people that are in those jobs with better tools and being able to be more remote because you're in a physical asset. You can't be in 50 different offices at once. And so you got 1, 2, 3 building engineers that need to be like, everyone's complaining about it's too hot, too cold. You come and check the physical temperature. And you ask, well, why do I need to come and check the physical temperature? I have thermostats. It should read somewhere. I should be able to see that. I should be able to see how many people are in a space to really understand how I can change that. And so the idea, kind of wrapping it back up, was that we wanted that self-healing building. It's really a cultural people shift change that we're getting to that point. But 8 years and we're still not at the point where people want fully autonomous and or self-healing buildings, right? We talk about security, and we did Bluetooth key cards at the time, and you still see, roughly somewhere between like 30 to 50% of the population don't adopt, right?
Why?
To some of that. I think it's change management. I think a lot of times when we put in new systems, new technology, it's a matter of communication of this is new and this is the benefit that you're going to get from going there. And so people, and again, I think this could be also generational, don't really know how or are scared to try a shift and or are nervous, right, of what will happen if I use this new technology.
Right. It's such an important part, and we've spoken about this before, right, that the human element, we all talk about the tech and the features and how wonderful it is and what it can achieve, but we don't really dig too deep into us, the human element, right? Who's using it on a day-to-day basis? How does it impact them? How have you sort of, guided people through that change?
Our teams are on site for our really big launches to help guide. We do training guides, we do webinars, we'll do live trainings. We do a whole series of pre-launch stuff before we go into a building to say, this is what you can expect. This is the step-by-step flows. This is what you can, here's the backup. People always ask like, well, what if the tech goes down? And, in these buildings, there's always people there. And now we're getting better and better with technology, right? Like you think about NFC digital wallet, and that works even if your phone's dead. So that's a good thing. We had a lot of platforms in the last 2 months with AWS and Microsoft Azure going down, right? There were platforms that went down. And again, NFC and digital wallet technology did not. So Bluetooth did. And so with those, we're evolving on technology. We are seeing systems shift. We are seeing systems become more open so they can interoperate. I think it's, we're just seeing an evolution right now.
It's a really good point. I mean, the fact that the cloud went down globally, you could say almost.
Yeah.
But the mission critical aspect of being able to get into the building was still feasible, right? People could still come and go as needed. It's really important.
Yeah.
And what would you say to somebody that had concerns around data privacy, right? We're collecting a lot of information about people that are just coming into the office just to go to work. What's Cohesion's response to something like that? We
take data security very seriously. So there's a lot of, certifications out there that monitor and see and, certify how you do that. So like SOC 2 Type 2 certifications, ISO 27001, making sure that you're regionally compliant with, whether it's California, Illinois, GDPR in UK, like any of those compliance levels. It's important to show where you're storing the data, what you're storing, how you're anonymizing that data when you store it. We take all of those practices very seriously, right, from the storage standpoint. From a PII perspective, the most that we get into from our standpoint right now is name and email. That's it. Okay. So from a building system standpoint, we're not really tying the temperature to a person. So It's not we're not tying sex or gender or any sort of like age demographic to anything that we store.
But isn't your app tracking me when I go to the bathroom? Like this is like
I'm not tracking you per se, unless you have a badge swipe to get into the bathroom, right?
Right.
I'm just tracking a person. But now with like video AI, you can track more and more, right? You can track people, like you can track demographics without tracking them to the name. And so I think practices of how people tie those things together is really important.
Yeah, and probably transparency. Right? What data are we collecting about you and how are we using it? Yes. I think it's going to be very important moving forward, because before it was just a plastic card and I tap my card and I can use that for time and attendance and stuff like that. But if you're starting to tie in video and you're tracking every time I go to the bathroom, that may be a challenge. Or what are you doing with that information?
Yeah. What do you do with that information? So when I started an advisory side of Cohesion's practice. We were purely software based for a long time. And what I realized about a year and a half ago was that not everyone's ready to just dive into the software world, right? They need to be able to see and talk through what they have, what their goals are. And so I started an advisory practice to help people through that journey to say, okay, let's start with basics and don't be scared of the software because technology is going to be the answer. So is change management, and so is what is your end goal, a goal of the human experience, right? So from that standpoint, this practice has really shown me that people need to kind of be taken through that journey of the user flows and what are you going to do with that data. All of a sudden, to your point, right? I'm helping a client that wants to do occupancy sensors outside of a bathroom. And people, some people were like, wait, why would you do that? Like, you want to know how often I go to the bathroom? I'm like, no, a sensor can't tell who, right? But it can inform cleaning. Right? So like if there's only 15 people that went in there on this one floor versus this other floor, we can say that after 30 people or 40 people, we should make sure that it triggers a cleaning. During the pandemic, we wanted to do sensors inside of elevators to say after 20 people were in the elevator, cleaning crew has to come in and spray down the elevator to get rid of those, to get rid of the particles. Now, there was other complications that you can't really put in a sensor into an elevator, and there's like a whole level of complication with elevator warranties and things of that nature. So we couldn't fully do that unless we had agreement with the elevator, manufacturers. Sure. So things like that you're not necessarily caring about who, right? Yeah. But you do want to improve the operation and the health and safety of folks.
And I think it's kind of interesting, kind of tying back to the parking days of dynamic pricing. Now this is dynamic labor force utilization. Yes. I'm sure there's I'm
sure there's
there's some buzzword in there somewhere. But right, like if normally I would dispatch somebody to clean a bathroom on every floor once an hour or once every 2 hours. Yep. Right, based on a schedule, which may not be efficient because nobody's used the bathroom. Correct. Why am I sending somebody? I mean, now listen, if Troy went to the bathroom, it could be a different story. Right? But, if only one or two people went in there during the course of that day, maybe it's just a 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon kind of cleaning cycle. So those are the types of operational efficiencies that a lot of these buildings, I'm sure, are looking for.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, we're still very early on for this, for any of this, but this is where we're going. And I think as everything smart gets connected into this intelligent framework, this is how we can start to inform and say, dispatch over here, go fix this, proactively change the temperature over here, because whenever this team or this room has 30 people, the temperature tends to go up by X amount of degrees. Right. Or when we already do this in Cohesion's platform, like if there's 30 people in a room and the CO2 levels or the air quality has been elevated for a period of time, we'll push fresh air, supply air into the room to dilute those pollutants, because not only it was, again, a feature that we had during COVID from a health and safety standpoint, it's now based on its productivity, right? Sure. So absolutely. People get tired. It's the afternoon slumps. It's how do you get people to be inside of these spaces and be comfortable?
I wish somebody would pump pure oxygen into my office sometimes.
We can. Just ask later.
I may take you up on that offer. I think one of the takeaways I'm walking away from here is smart doesn't mean intelligent. I think you've said that in a couple of roundabout ways, and I think that's really right. It's like it's not just about throwing a bunch of sensors. It's like, okay, the sensors are smart, but what's intelligent about it, and how do you react? How do we react to it? Correct. So, Thru, as we wrap up here, I want to take you through a lightning round and ask you just some questions, and you tell me like the first thought that comes into your head. So we'll start with, what's the most outdated idea in our industry that needs to die?
Physical key cards.
Well, I'll agree. Yes, I agree. What technology outside of security inspires your work?
Energy efficiency.
Oh, okay.
Definitely tying energy efficiency to people utilization of spaces. So really getting dynamic, demand-driven HVAC, because I huge believer in carbon and sustainability and net zero, and the technology out there right now is not often tied to occupancy and utilization of spaces.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, fair enough. What emerging trend are people undervaluing right now?
AI.
In what way?
In real estate.
In real estate?
Yeah, I think so. Because, again, you can't AI without connectedness and a whole system of connectedness is not, it doesn't capture the full, I would say, the full potential of what AI can be.
Does your platform leverage AI in any way?
We do, but we have it separated because not everyone's ready for AI. So first, we have all the data coming in. We can put AI, we can layer AI on top of it. It's not like it has to be embedded, and that makes people feel comfortable that it's a choice,
Right.
that it's not part.
Gotcha.
So,
and can they have like conversations with Cohesion, like with an agent inside of your platform?
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What kind of conversations are people having?
Help me understand my data. What's my occupancy of this office? It's really helped me parse through and analyze a massive data set, right? Because sensors will throw off data in increments of time of anywhere between 15 seconds to 15 minutes. And that, when you think about a 1 million square foot building, that could be millions and millions of data points on a daily basis.
Sure.
And so parsing through that, connecting different data sources, like how much energy and water is being used by each person that's coming into the building. Compare Chicago to Arizona. Compare my, wettest states to my driest states, like things like that. And we're still refining our models, but that's where you can really get intelligence on the go that an analyst couldn't do or will take a very long time to analyze from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, like the real estate portfolios, right? We're not really just talking about one building. I mean, an owner may own a building, but there's more than likely a portfolio of buildings in a lot of different geographies and a lot of different climates. And I could see how that data would be extremely different, even California versus New York, or to your point, Arizona versus Chicago.
Yeah, exactly.
Very different environments.
And different energy sources and different, how people come to work, whether that's train, here the subway. We're in New York today, but a lot of people drive in a lot of different cities. So there's just a lot of data, and buildings take up a lot of energy, systems, resources. And, we've got a lot of hybrid stuff, so people aren't using it the way that it was intended and built for. So we need to start adapting, and the only way to adapt is to understand.
Absolutely. Adapt or die. Is that what you're saying? No, I'm just kidding. What emerging trend are people overrating right now? What's overvalued?
Does it have to be technology?
No.
Oh, then for sure, I think the concept of hospitality, people think that hospitality means people, adding more bodies. So like if you go into an office building and you see people being like, hello, Mr. Johnson, welcome to the building. You talk to a young 30-something,
they don't want nothing to do with that.
Exactly.
Don't talk to me.
Hospitality for them is technology, right? Remember, in hotels, hospitality wasn't about the concierge. It was about the fact that I could walk into my room and I could hit shades, I could hit lighting, and all of those were in controls, right? It was technology. Hotels were one of the first parts of like IoT technology coming together for end user experience. So when I think hospitality, I think people completely confuse what hospitality means to human interaction versus experience.
I've never thought about it that way before, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if this was the 1950s, 1960s, and you didn't have a lot of technology, then hospitality means, how can I serve you better? And the only way to serve people better was to throw more people at them, right? Everybody would become compartmentalized. Who's the maitre d', who's the concierge, and all
Throw
that.
more labor at it.
That's it. But now, all the power in the world is in my smartphone. I don't need to interact with somebody necessarily.
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
And especially if you're interacting with somebody, you don't want to be passed to two different people, right? You want like one person to have all the answers. So they need to be equipped with answers, which is technology.
What is a word that somebody would describe Cohesion with today? And what is that word going to be 5 or 10 years from now?
Today, integrations.
Okay.
I'd say that's, if it's one word, they will talk about integrations. I think in 10 years, it's going to be, I hope we get to the word autonomous.
Ooh.
Nice.
Okay.
That was our original vision. So.
Autonomous buildings.
Yeah. I mean, there's grades of autonomous cars, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're in like grade 1 or 2. I think it's level 1 or 2 because they're starting to self-drive, right? And they are in many cities. So maybe we're up to 3 or 4, but I think it's 7 levels of autonomy on the vehicle. And I think that we should be thinking about buildings in a similar way, right? They're physical assets that have people to drive the operation.
If you had a security professional in here today, somebody that's not installed in a smart building system or an intelligent building system like Cohesion, what would you challenge them with? How should they be learning about this type of technology and incorporating it into their business?
That's a good question. I've done a lot of this on the advisory side of the business where I will help map out, let's just go through a person's journey inside of the building. So when we think about, the digital badge or not the digital badge, we still have multiple card formats that people use, right? And we have different entrances in multi-tenanted buildings, especially complicated, where you have a landlord system and then an office has their own system. Walk me through what you want that person to do. Like, just simply put, right? Everybody has used a badge everyone in the U.S. has used a badge somewhere in their life. And so you want to walk through that system. And so I think we tend to go deep into the cabling and the connections and the infrastructure and whose system talks to who. And I think we have to step back and say, let's just talk about the user's journey first.
Right. And what does that look like?
Correct.
Right. What is the outcome?
Correct.
Ultimately?
Correct.
Last question from me. I'm really inspired by your journey and where you came from and where you are now. From a productivity perspective, what are you doing now? Like, what's a hack from a productivity perspective that allows Thru to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night? Like,
I'll tell you when I get there.
What are you doing to be as efficient as possible?
AI. So we became, in the last, I would say 6 months ago, I became an AI first company. So I encourage my team that we're using AI responsibly, but we're using it for complete efficiency. So we have become everything is about leveraging AI tooling, making sure that our flows are connected. If it means that we have to take an extra day, we have AI days monthly. So my team takes a day out of the month to build AI tooling into our workflows so that we can become more efficient. So for me, I've now named my ChatGPT agent Maya. Train her very well. She is fantastic. So my favorite, I love all of my team, but my favorite team member right now is Maya.
Maya just understands you in a different way.
She does. She gets me. She even says good morning, and she has my voice, and
all the little things, right?
All the little things.
Absolutely.
The hospitality behind it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Artificial intelligence as hospitality. There's something in there too.
Well, hopefully they'll get the call centers and all of that better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please. So Thru CohesionIB.com. I always wondered what the IB meant, and now I know. It's Cohesion Intelligent Buildings.
Yes.
So CohesionIB.com. You can connect with Thru on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Any parting words or any last bits of wisdom you'd like to leave for the audience?
I would love to leave this behind, right? If you use your phone for everything, ask why you're not using it for your physical, like all of the things that you do from a physical, like buildings perspective. If you do it at your home, you can ask for it in the office, and it's just the journey that they take, right? And technology is there. It's the people that aren't on that front. So ask.
That's nice. Really well said. Thru, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Today's episode is brought to you by HID Mobile Access, the most secure and convenient way to open doors with the device you already use every day. With HID, organizations get flexible, future-ready solutions that easily integrate into workplace and tenant experience apps, creating a seamless journey from street to suite. If you're ready to modernize your access control experience, try it for yourself. Sign up for a free trial at hidglobal.com/solutions and click on Mobile Access.